Hi, I'm Terry, and this is It's About Writing. Today we have Verity Buchanan. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Okay, I love that name too. And she is a YA fantasy writer. And Verity, why don't you just tell us about yourself and maybe how you came to start writing and what kind of work that you do?
All right, that sounds good. So I am Verity Buchanan, as introduced here. I have been writing since I was about 6 years old, and started writing pretty much because I had been read to by my parents, and I loved stories. So I wanted to create my own, and as soon as I was able to write them, I started writing them down. So I've been creating stories for a long time, and I very much enjoy getting into characters' heads. I think my characters may be my favorite part of writing, although I enjoy many other aspects of it, because the characters are real to me and they're like friends that I can squeal over and wish I could hug and just analyze to my heart's content.
Yeah, that sounds great. I saw on your website too that you play piano.
I do, yeah.
Do you also paint? I see a picture behind you.
That is actually my mother's work. She is an artist who sells her work sometimes so that's by her, not me. But I do on occasion draw. I like to draw with pencil because I can erase my mistakes.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I can understand that. Well, that is great. Why don't you show us your books? I know you have a
All right.
couple published.
So yeah, these are my two currently published works. This is The Journey, Cariston Series Book 1, and The Village, Cariston Series Book 2.
Oh, okay.
So the camera quality on my laptop isn't that good, so you might not be able to get a super good look at them, but that is them.
Mm-hmm.
And they are a young adult fantasy, the Cariston series, which you can find the books under that name if you look them up on online, and they're a fantasy series about ordinary people put into extraordinary circumstances. So they're not chosen ones, they're not great kings or anything like that. They're just people trying to live ordinary lives and finding beauty in ordinary things. So
I love that idea. It's beautiful. So you wanted to share with us a little bit today about how you went about making the language for your story world.
yeah, so Tolkien was a huge inspiration for my writing. J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Lord of the Rings. I read that series when I was 11 years old. Well, actually, it was 10, almost 11, and I was just totally into it. That my sister and I would create paper dolls for hours on end of the different characters and play with them and all kinds of stuff. And I decided I wanted to make my own fantasy world. And one of the things I picked up on was he created language, and it added so much depth and richness to his story. So since I had picked up on that, I decided I wanted to do something similar, and I created a little tiny teensy base of vocabulary words for a fictional language. And ever since then, my sister and I have been creating language and deepening it, and incorporating it into books like these. So
More where you've been creating that one language, for all this time.
we have several different languages invented for different countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Only a couple of them we've paid significant attention to. Like most of the others, we get a kind of feel for what the language incorporates, like
Mm-hmm.
sounds, like phonetical sounds they favor, or the types of idioms they use, but we only get a couple of vocabulary words for them and leave it at that. And then we focus our attention more on 2 or 3 languages that come up more frequently.
Wow.
For cultures that may come up more frequently in the books.
That sounds really hard and complex. So how do you go about that?
Well, when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing at all. I was just inventing words that I liked the sound of Because that's I mean, some parts of creating language are hard. That one is not hard for me, just because I guess my brain likes to rearrange letters and create new words out of them. So that part is easy enough. Creating a grammar for the language, now that is significantly more of an undertaking.
Right.
And like I said, I didn't know what I was doing when I first started out, because I was 10 years old, and I'd taken like maybe 2 months of Latin, primer Latin before, and that was it. But in high school, I did a college class on Latin, and that really opened my eyes to how language is structured and the differences that can come in between different language grammar structures and syntax, that is how the words are put together in a sentence, and just vocabulary, conjugation. Latin really helped me to figure out how I wanted to structure my own languages.
So if someone wants to start a new language, like a new story right now, what would you suggest they take a Latin course first?
I mean, it depends on how in-depth they want to go. Sometimes just creating a word, made up word here and there is enough to create that sense of depth. If you just want to give a little bit of depth here and there, a feeling of depth. If you want to really go hardcore, and actually create a whole language or part of a language, a significant part of one, I would definitely suggest studying some other language, having a knowledge of another language. Don't have to take it for 3 years like I did in high school, but a knowledge of just having some other language to compare to English is so helpful. Because then you can see differences, and you can kind of reason from there what other differences could come about.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. And so let's see, how do you create story world in a fantasy where anything can be different or everything is different?
So like, you're talking about setting wise, different cultures. So yeah, some of my cultures I drew significant inspiration from real world cultures. There's one country in my world called Enithwin. It doesn't feature much in the main series, but it does feature in a later book after the main series. And it was heavily inspired by Celtic culture, which at the time we invented it, my sister and I had been studying in school about Roman Britain and the Celts and all that kind of really cool stuff. I was just fascinated by torques and mounds and the beautiful language. So that not only the culture, but the language itself is influenced by that. But I find that as one does more and more with one's own culture, it can sometimes start to break away from the inspiration a little bit and become more of its own thing. And I think that's just your own brain starts to deepen things the more you work with them, in a way that a relationship becomes deeper and better as you spend more time with a person.
Yeah.
Also, my sister and I always looked at creating world and setting as discovery. We like to think of it as discovering something that had already existed, and now we were exploring. So we would draw upon our own imaginations, and all the books we'd read and all the places we'd seen, and just kind of pick and choose and create something new. So I think having a base in your mind of lots of good literature is really foundational tool, because I didn't even read that much fantasy when I was a kid. I read more fantasy in high school and since graduation. But even just reading historical fiction, any kind of good literature is really useful for developing imagination.
That's great advice for any kind of fiction writer. Yeah. So I wrote down, how do you come up with your ideas? But that kind of touches on it a little bit
Yeah,
already, but
I would say I draw my ideas from all of life, honestly. I think all of my life has been research.
mm,
Research into people, research into relationships and emotions, research into cultures and um, communication, all kinds of things, and
yeah.
research into the world around us and the beauty of nature, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's great to be curious and just interested in the world, I think, as a writer.
Mhm. I think, and I just think there's so much beauty everywhere in both people and in creation and even in the small things, which is why I think it's such an important theme, recurring theme in my stories that I didn't even consciously write into there, but I believe so strongly in the worth and beauty in every small thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to share with our writers today?
Let me see. Well, this is kind of a little piece of advice I end up saying to any author I know for a long period of time is just know your own story and know your own writing style and really understand what you want to do as an author. And that way, when you get criticism, you can distinguish between criticism of what you're trying to get, what criticism of like your own writing and your own style, and criticism of things you could improve upon in your style and presentation.
That's very,
Because sometimes, yeah, sometimes people will try to rewrite another person's style simply because it's not their thing, and that bothers me when I see
mm,
authors who trying to rewrite their entire, trying to restructure their entire approach to writing based on one person's negative feedback, when other people out there would very much enjoy their style.
right. So good. Well, thank you, Verity, for being on. And I will attach your links so everyone can find you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for your advice and
and you're welcome.
sharing with us.
It was
Yeah,
very fun to chat.
thank you.